Jesus said, "It will go ill with you, Chorazin, and just as ill with you, Bethsaida. If the miracles worked in your midst had occurred in Tyre and Sidon, they would long ago have reformed in sackcloth and ashes. It will go easier on the day of judgment for Tyre and Sidon than for you. And as for you, Capernaum, are you to be exalted to the skies? You shall be hurled down to the realm of death. He who hears you hears me. He who rejects you rejects me. And he who rejects me rejects him who sent me." The Gospel of the Lord. Let us all be seated. Today is the first Friday of the 26th week of the year. And again, the sacrifice of the Mass reminds us of the general summary of the teachings of Christ and tells us of dire warnings Christ had given to those who have heard His commandments and had never obeyed them. So Christ gives us three examples. The example of Chorazin and Bethsaida, the example of Tyre and Sidon, and the example of Capernaum. In Capernaum, Jesus Christ showed both His miracles and all His teachings. In Sidon and Tyre, Christ did not show any of His miracles and did not preach any of His doctrines. But in Chorazin and Bethsaida, Christ showed His teachings and His doctrines. So Chorazin and Bethsaida is identical to Capernaum, except in Capernaum Christ had showed more miracles and have taught more of His teachings. And Christ is warning Chorazin, Bethsaida, and Capernaum that if what was shown to them in the form of miracles and taught to them in the form of doctrines were taught in Sidon and Tyre, Sidon and Tyre would have repented and converted and followed Christ. And so Christ asked the question, how come in Chorazin and Bethsaida and Capernaum, Christ have shown more miracles and taught more doctrines, and yet they did not believe? And so Christ says, Capernaum has a big defect. That just because Christ showed and performed more miracles there and have taught more doctrines there, Capernaum thought that they were the best among the tribes of Israel, the towns of Israel. And Christ says, no, because they have seen more miracles and heard more doctrines, but because they did not obey, greater punishment is reserved to them. In fact, Christ says, if what Capernaum, Chorazin, and Bethsaida were taught in Sodom and Gomorrah, those two towns would have converted and lived. And because Chorazin, Bethsaida, and Capernaum did not obey what Christ had taught them, the punishment that awaits them is worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, this is a threat Christ has taught us in today's gospel, because among many communities we had been taught very much. We have learned more than many religious orders. We have learned more than seminarians. And we have seen more miracles in our lives than ordinary people in the world. So God has given us more witnesses of miracles and more teachings even the world has never heard. But don't think that that has made us superior to other people. That has given us greater responsibility. Because if other nations have heard what we have heard and have seen miracles that we have seen, they would have been saints by now. How come we are not yet saints? And as the first reading says, there is only one reason behind that. And we are more concerned with the things that interest us rather than the things which is God's will. So in other words, we are more concerned in doing our own will, as the first reading says, than doing God's will. And so Christ, because of this, our punishment is worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. Because if these two towns have known the things we have known and seen the things we have seen, they would have been converted. And so it's so important for us to see what are the things that God has taught us which He has not taught other people. We have to recall what are the miracles we have seen in our lives. Miracles that people have not seen in the world. And have we been grateful for all these things and have shown this gratitude precisely by putting into practice the things we have learned? And so the gospel for today are warnings as Christ have told us in the past Sundays and the past weekdays. They're all warnings of people who have heard the commands of Christ and did not do it. And again, the message of today's Mass is exactly the same. It's the story of people who have heard the commands of Christ and did not do it. And so, therefore, Christ warns us that today He speaks to us through His modern prophets. And Christ says, who are prophets? People who reminds us of the commandments of Christ. Those are prophets. Prophets only do one thing. They remind us of the commandments of Christ. And Christ says, he who welcomes a prophet because he is a prophet will receive the reward of a prophet. But those who do not listen to prophets who reminds us of the commandments of God does not listen to God Himself. And so the words of Christ is, he who hears you hears me. But he who rejects you rejects me. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.